to collaborate here. Go back to our worksheet. We'll go to allocating costs. We're going to use sales mixes to allocate these indirect costs. So if everyone's looking right here, we have a bar that sells beverages. We also have a dining room that serves food and beverages, I suppose. And their total revenue, direct costs, contributory income, indirect costs, and total operating income are right here. Okay. We've also separated the sales, so the food and beverage sales, the direct costs for our food and beverage department, so that's our food cost, beverage cost, and maybe even some labor in there. And each operating department has different different gross margins based on those. So our food department has a gross margin of $30,000, and our beverage department, or a bar, has a gross margin of $6,000. And my stomach won't stop grumbling. So now what we can do is we can allocate our indirect costs, this $24,000, to our two different departments. One easy way to do this would be to divide $24,000 by 2 and then give half to your food department and half to your beverage department. But it's not very accurate, because the amount of resources that went to produce $105,000 worth of sales is going to be a lot different than the amount of resources consumed to produce $45,000 worth of sales. So we use our menu mix percentages to do that, to help allocate those costs. So our food cost, or sorry, our food sales was 70% of our overall sales. So we allocate 70% of our total indirect costs to our food department. So we would take this gives us our sales mix multiplied by 24,000. So 70%, which is our sales mix for our dining room, is 70%. So we take 70% of our indirect costs and allocate it to our dining room, which is in this case $16,800. Now that we've allocated these indirect costs to our dining room, we can calculate our operating income for the dining room. So if we take our contributory income and subtract our indirect costs, we get an operating income of $13,200. So as of right now, as we're looking at it, our dining room is making some good money. I'm not sure what kind of period this is for here. Maybe this is a week, maybe this is a year, I'm not sure. But at a first glance, our dining room is making money. This is good. So next we do the same thing with our beverage. If our food sales mix percentage was 70%, then our beverage must be 30. But just to show you the math here, we take 45,000 divided by 150,000, and we get 30%, or 0.3. So if we put the other equation in there, we do this, 45,000 divided by the total, multiplied by the same 24,000, and we get $7,200. So that $7,200 is 30% of our indirect costs that we're allocating to our bar. So if we take our contributory income, subtract our indirect costs, at face value right now, it looks like our beverage department is actually losing money. At this point, you would be going, okay, that's not good, obviously not good. What are some things that you could do? You could increase prices. That could present some problems. You could decrease costs. However, that would decrease direct costs, not necessarily your indirect costs. This is an example taken from the textbook. In the textbook, it says that you could also rent out your bar. So basically, you're getting rid of all of your beverage income, but you're also getting rid of those indirect costs and those direct costs. So you're basically not incurring any income, generating income, but you're also not incurring any losses. So your profit is zero, right? And the idea here is that zero profit is better than a $1,200 loss. So, and let's say that you can charge $750 rent for your bar. Let's say that this is actually a doable thing. So let's work a scenario here where we're renting out the bar. Let me just see if no. So sales, again, for food only, this is just our dining room, is $105,000. The direct costs stay the same at 75 grand because nothing's changed there. Our income, our contributory income, stays the same at 30 grand because, again, nothing has changed between our sales and our direct costs. However, we find that after renting out our bar, that our indirect costs, total indirect costs now that are being absorbed by only one department, are $19,350. So if we take our income, subtract our indirect costs, we get an income before rental income of $10,650. Now, if we add the rental income, because we have to add that, because we're charging rent and we're receiving rent, we get, where's the plus button? That's one of the things I was talking about with the Surface, is like you have to figure out how to use all these thingies before you can be normal with it. So in this case, our operating income is $11,400, and that's including rental income. But if you look at the two examples, you see that with your bar, your operating income was higher. It was $13,200. Now it's $11,400. And that's with rental income. The reason why we're seeing this is because in the one example, we allocated our indirect costs. And in the second example, that's what our indirect costs are being absorbed by one department. Yes. For which? Operating income is your income before rent plus your rental income. Looks like that. So it's different, right? Like we can allocate it, but is that a true allocation of what activities are consuming specific resources? No. It's just a way to allocate it based on sales mixes. Yeah. The best or the most appropriate way, in my mind, to be able to allocate your indirect costs effectively is to look at your labor and look at the amount of money you're spending on your bartenders. Now then divide that by your total amount of labor. You're probably going to come up, as long as your bar is not a huge, massive, crazy bar, you're probably going to come up with a low percentage, probably like 10%, right? Use those percentages to allocate your indirect costs. Reason why I say that is because if people perform activities, those activities consume resources, and those activities produce sales. It's also those activities that are being measured in your labor. People, like your staff, perform activities, you're also paying them to perform activities, right? So if you really wanted to separate more accurately, look at your labor percentages between the bar and the dining room. So if we were to see, to continue, I'll show you this part right here. So say now that we know that our indirect costs are $19,350, we go down to an updated version of distributing these costs. For our indirect costs, we take the total. This is saying again that we own the bar again because we stopped renting it out. Subtract the food indirect costs. We get a beverage allocation of $4,650, which is a lot less than what we would have, is a lot less than how we did it before by using sales mixes. So now if we calculate the operating incomes again, there we go. We see that actually, now that we've more accurately distributed these direct costs, we have a more accurate picture of their operating incomes. And in this case, they're both profitable departments. So no action required. So in this example, I think they used that rent piece of the example to show you how, show you the difference between what your actual direct costs are opposed to what the addition or the additional indirect costs of having a bar are. Don't rent out your bar to figure those out. Look to your labor, take your bartender's wages, total for a week, then divide it by your entire labor for the week. That percentage, you allocate that percentage of your indirect costs to your beverage department. I'm just going to stop sharing that and turn this off. The